So we'll move on to our next speaker. And this is a person who will talk about the developments in 3D printing. He is currently a professor at the Department of Macromolecular Sciences and Engineering at Case Western University and has over 400 publications and 13 patents to date. His research interests include novel polymers and nanostructured materials. Please welcome Dr. Rigoberto Advincula.
Thank you very much, Dr. Concepcion, for the introduction, and I'd like to again acknowledge our distinguished awardees, guests, and also various department heads of the government. So I'm going to talk to you today about materials research. The unique aspect is I call this innovationeering. A unique Filipino innovationeering where we look at the materials, technology, and careers. Indeed, Filipino labs, something that I endeavor. It's not because I'm a Filipino that I like to come back here, but there are many reasons for me to do this. And it's about time, of course, that many Filipino from abroad are empowered to come back and establish their own identity here. I'm also the editor-in-chief of the MRS Communications Materials Research Society, but for a long time I've been a very active member of the American Chemical Society. In fact, I was the chair of the Polymer Division of the American Chemical Society and a fellow of the American Chemical Society as well. So today I'm going to talk to you about what we've been doing at Case Western Reserve University. Case Western is one of the first universities to establish an integrated polymer research, science, and engineering department. Some of you may not know the word polymer or macromolecular science, but some of you will understand the word plastic. And that's what it is. We are the premier plastic program for many, many years that was established in Cleveland, Ohio at Case Western. And so the difference is that being a chemist, I'm very interested in molecular. A lot of research that we have done, and this represents some of the cover pages of journals that we have published, involve interfacial science, nanostructuring, defining things at the boundary between two interfaces, often dealing with surface-sensitive analytical methods that allow us to use this, for example, for sensors or different types of nanostructuring for nanomaterials. And so my expertise as a chemist and now belonging to an engineering department actually brings me the ability to take that fundamental knowledge and apply it. And so what happens is that we have endeavored these days in an area called 3D printing. Some of you may look at this, additive manufacturing or another way to bring advanced manufacturing. But when I look at these problems involving strengthening of materials or applying them for tissue engineering or making the new space-age materials, I look at the boundary of the molecule that will strengthen them as future materials. In fact, 3D printing, even in the United States, is very much a game changer yet. And we have the opportunity to establish 3D printing right away here in the Philippines by bringing the best machines, best training we can get, and affiliating with a program like I have. In fact, in partnership with DOST, for the last 3 years, I've been training about 10 Filipinos coming to my lab, working in my lab, going back to the Philippines, getting their Ph.D., and now some of them are establishing their own labs here in the Philippines, bringing the best technology right away to the Philippines without waiting for many, many years to develop it. So many years ago, I actually, and I'm another product of the Department of Chemistry, University of the Philippines. I have been visiting the Philippines even as a first-year graduate student in the US. In fact, if I can remember, every year since I left in 1989, I was here every year. Sometimes I would come here 5 times a year. And that connection, it's not just because I'm a Filipino, but I love coming back to the Philippines. I'm a stakeholder. So whenever you empower a stakeholder, many good things come out. So I partnered 5 years ago with Dr. Florian Del Mundo to establish the ANSWER laboratory, which is exactly a mirror of my laboratory, in surface analytical methods. And together we were successful in bringing a lot of grants, training a number of PhD students in our lab, and establishing a lot of analytical methods that are unique in surface science. More recently, some of the visitors in my lab were involved, again, as I said, with 3D printing. What we have is I train these students basically on a sandwich program basis where they come back, they spend about a year in my lab and they come back and get their PhD. What a great way to get your PhD because you don't have to worry about procurement process. So in 1 year, they can publish 3 papers, get their PhD done, come back and defend. So how fast can that be? And that is basically a model that I have done to train about 15 PhDs for the last 5 years. In fact, I like coming back here. I like to bring my own undergrad students here. So for the last 3 years, we've visited several high schools, universities, bringing American Case Western Reserve universities on STEM outreach. So we would visit local high schools and teach to them new things about 3D printing, advanced manufacturing, and nanostructuring. And what it brings is I also educate my own students back in the US about the Philippines. So I'm an ambassador, in a way, that we bring the next generation of Americans to understand Filipinos, including manga and bagoong. So we are a global community. We look at it in the perspective not only of how technology can be applied, how the economics of the Philippines is very much interrelated to ASEAN, Asia, the US, but we have to recognize our strengths. Our strengths is that we are a young, relatively young populated country, an emerging country. We have a lot of natural resources, biodiversity. There's a certain drive in us that are unique. So we have many advantages as I outlined here. We have an English-based system, educational system. Our geographical location is unique. We don't have neighbors, but not for long. We are rich in natural resources. So this should, in fact, translate in the ideal world to a low unemployment and inflation, economic opportunities for all, high value-added industry, security and safety, but instead we get this, the exact opposite of what I outlined. So what is the solution and what are we trying to do here? Here at PAASE, of course, we want to empower our generation, the next generation, not with just economic development, but scientific translation. So when I say translation, it doesn't mean that we totally copy what's outside there and then adapt to their ways of doing things. We take the best that's outside, bring it here, and translate it, Philippinize it. And that's really the way it should be done because it's been done by Japan, Korea, and Taiwan. So translation means working with industry, trying to find that knowledge gap that we can bridge, and it's basically understanding problems. Now, being an engineer or an engineering department, I became problem-oriented, meaning I try to solve problems as a way of gaining research projects, for example, for my students. So through the years and many things that have been echoed, in fact, yesterday, is all we need are investments. Right now, it's a good time because the OST is investing. The government is investing. Eventually, investment translates to private investment because the government cannot invest all the time. Also, we need to train, bring back the high-paying jobs, bring back the manufacturing. We need to, of course, have a zone of law, safety, and ownership. And we have to bring back the diaspora, such as I am and Mike Puruganan back here. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show the engineer in me. When I look at things, how do I look at them? Well, corrosion. How many of you are familiar with corrosion? Corrosion is actually an economic cost. About 4 to 6% of the country's GDP, do you know, goes to fighting corrosion. That's how much we spend for corrosion. And by the way, in the United States, that's how much they spend in litigation with lawyers, okay? So, if it is such a problem, how can we solve it? Well, basically, corrosion is an electrochemistry problem. So electrochemistry means it's a redox reaction. In many ways, we use it to harness and for energy storage, but in many ways it's actually used in designing smart coatings that can be used to fight corrosion by reversing the whole thing using additives and different types of smart paints and nanostructures. How about this problem? Plastic, okay? Pollution, yes. I mean, interesting to say, most of the pollution in the ocean is not coming from the Philippines. It's coming from the Mekong Delta and several rivers in China, not even the United States. Now, when we look at plastic, we have an underappreciation of what it does. It's an everyday thing. We need plastics. Imagine a world without plastics, okay? Without thermosets, elastomer, rubber, okay? Epoxy. But we need it. And so comes that there's a challenge, for example, to harvest bio-based feedstock, abaca. It might surprise you that I actually know a lot about abaca. I consulted for a company that asked me, a local Philippine company that asked me to convert abaca into plastic. Okay? And because of this, I also work on 3D printing. Question, are there Philippine indigenous cellulosic products or even rubber that can be used for 3D printing, such that we don't have to import 3D printed raw materials for the next generation industrial for direction? Looking at health, looking at diseases, biomedical engineering, drug delivery. That means that we need to look at materials. We need to look at imaging, different types of methods that can extend lifetime, detect diseases. In fact, one of the things that I did with Dr. Del Mundo is to work on sensors for determining diseases or diagnosing diseases at the upfront, all the way to the clinical stage. Another problem is Moore's Law, okay? And that has largely been answered and surpassed. So many things that involve, traditional microelectronics, trying to go into integrated electronics, different types of parallel processing, will be needed for artificial intelligence and machine learning. My contribution in this is actually polymer electronics, different types of whole transport layers and devices. Now, how many of you here use a Samsung phone? Okay? The Samsung phone is largely operated on an organic light emitting diode display. My first PhD student, his name is Sean Sia, works for a company called Universal Display Corporation in New Jersey. There's only one source of OLED materials. It's UDC. And the R&D head of that company was my first PhD student. Now, you may ask, what phone am I using? I'm sorry, but I'm using iPhone because my wife said so. Oil, refining. We are so dependent on oil. In fact, when we think about inflation, we blame, the food is rising, the cost of... Actually, the biggest blame in oil is importation of it. We spend so much money because we have so little resource. And whatever little resource we have, we even give it away or somebody takes it away from us. Do you know that in 2025, Malampaya franchise will go down? And Malampaya supplies about 10% of our electricity needs. Has the government thought of replacing or how to replace Malampaya? Now, I was a professor at University of Houston for 10 years. My colleague here, Arnold Guloy, we worked together. I trained a lot of chemists who ended up working for Shell, Halliburton, Baker Hughes, Schlumberger. I was working on a tiny bit of material called propan sand, coating it, not knowing that sand was actually used for hydraulic fracturing. Hydraulic fracturing, you all may not correlate it, but it's called shale oil and gas. That is the single reason why the United States is a powerhouse in producing oil and gas. It's because of hydraulic fracturing. Now, that technique is still in the United States and is now being implemented in the sea. Imagine if there were tens and hundreds of malampayas around the Philippines, in the West Philippine Sea. Imagine how much it will wean us out from importing oil and gas if only private investment can be brought in to these fields. These are fields yet to be explored. Some have proven reserves, but this is definitely technology that could be brought into the Philippines. So we rely on geothermal energy. Not bad. We are actually the second and one time the first in geothermal energy production worldwide. Okay? So, in summary, you can see here, there are many opportunities, many reasons for me to come back. I do not shy away just because I'm a Filipino that I have to come back here, spending sometimes as much as 5 times a year. But it's because I'm a stakeholder. Empowering the stakeholder is very powerful. You need to find more stakeholders out there. There are many in PAASE who would like to do the same thing that I've been doing. And so for me, trying to train the next generation means better jobs through education, training in the advanced degrees. And I've been doing that. This is actually a group photo just before I left UH. You can see how many Filipinos were part of my group. And eventually how many of them ended up with degrees in my lab. So with that, I'd like to thank you and be happy to answer questions later in the panel.
Thank you, Gobet, for that very, very inspiring talk on how we can develop new materials using natural materials.